the illuminated torch. This can be simultaneously a symbol of freedom, a symbol of knowledge and awareness, of enlightenment, and it could also be used as a flame of sacrifice, a flame of those in the know using their knowledge to subvert others and to create sacrifice or immolation in the world. I don't tend to see this symbol as such. I tend to look at this symbol as the flame of knowledge, the flame of the torch of freedom, the torch of liberty, and that's how I tend to look at it. But it goes back to the Babylonian queen, the Babylonian version of Isis in the Trinity. So you had, just as you have God the Father, God the Son, and the Blessed Mother, okay, in the Christian Trinity, the Holy Spirit taking the place of the feminine, of course, in that Trinity. But you have the Egyptian Trinity of Osiris, the Father God, Isis, the Mother, and Horus, the Divine Child. In Babylon, you have this same Trinity. You had Nimrod, the Father, Creator God. You had the Son, which was Tammuz, depicted here, and he's sitting on the lap of the sacred feminine goddess, which was known as Semiramis in this culture. So this is a depiction of her on an ancient coin, holding the cross of the cross of the sun, and a version of the chalice, which could also be seen as a torch. So you have Semiramis depicted here, the rays of the sun reflected from the moon. She is the moon goddess illuminated, the queen of heaven. She's holding the torch of awareness, of liberty, of freedom, of enlightenment. You see it on the back of old American dimes. You see it in Columbia Pictures logo. You see it on Amoco's gas company logo. So in direct relation to the Queen of Heaven is the symbol of the dove. So the dove is how the moon goddess is depicted as being a crescent, a white crescent moon. The white crescent moon, as it makes its trek across the sky, looks like a dove, a white bird. So, you know, you could imagine this piece as the wings as the crescent moon, and it's making its trek across the sky at night. So this is why the dove was associated, the bird, the dove, is associated with the lunar feminine goddess, just like the falcon was associated with the male solar god, Horus. And the word dove in the French language is columbe, C-O-L-U-M-B-E, columbe. This is why we have so many usages of the word Columbia or Columbus in American symbology. The founder of the country is named after the dove. His name was actually Cristobal Colon, and he was a member of a secret society network. Here you see him giving a secret society hand gesture in this painting. But he was renamed Columbus after the goddess Columbia. See, it's the feminine goddess named after the dove, Columbe. We have the district of Columbia, the name of the capital where the male dominator phallic energy, the seat of male dominator power, is rooted in the United States. And look at where it's at. It's named after the sacred feminine, the dove, Columbia, and it is situated between two states. It is situated between Maryland and Virginia. Maryland, named after the goddess of the Christian Trinity, Mary, and the Virgin, Virginia. So right in between the two feminine states named after the goddess, you have the male phallic symbol of power also taking the name of the goddess. This is a symbolic rape, if you ask me. This is placing the phallic symbol directly in a slot between the two sacred feminine states. The male dominator energy of concentrated, centralized power of this country erected right between the two feminine states of Maryland and Virginia. Here we see the goddess depicted on Columbia Pictures. You have Columbia Records, Columbia Broadcasting, Columbia University, with decidedly Masonic symbology on the shield of Columbia University, with the three crowns representing the three Blue Lodge degrees, with the square of base consciousness depicted there as well. But we have to understand, again, that the goddess represents the intuitive side of our consciousness. It represents conscience, the ability to know right from wrong. And that is a protector energy. It is also the aspect that gives birth to the male principle, the savior of the world, the enlightened neocortex. Here we see Mary, the sacred feminine, the limbic brain, the queen of heaven. She's giving birth to the immaculate heart of Jesus, the savior of the world. She is standing on top of the serpent here, the reptile. She's conquering the R complex, the limbic brain, where emotion is born, where care is born in us. Okay? When we listen to our intuition and listen to our inborn knowledge of right and wrong, we conquer the reptile aspect of ourself and we give birth to the Son of the Godhead. And here you see the dove above her head, and here you see the 12 stars depicting the 12 houses of the zodiac. In this image is even more clear how she is a feminine protector. The Queen of Heaven, illuminated by the rays of the sun, is wearing the dark cloak of the heavens, the dark cloak with the stars embedded in it, because she is the Queen of Heaven. You have the crescent moon, because she's the moon goddess. She's being crowned by the angels as the Queen of Heaven, and she is acting as the protector of innocence, the inner child, conscience, care. And again, she's giving birth to the male savior figure, the neocortex, the divine child, the Son, Jesus, and she is holding the serpent at bay. In that case, the sea serpent or the reptile. The limbic brain holds the reptile complex at bay when we make a deep connection with it and we get into our intuitive side and we care. That's where conscience is born from. And that's why this goddess is seen as a protector. She's seen as the watcher of the torch of freedom and liberty, because we have to get in touch with that sacred feminine side of ourselves in order to truly bear conscience and freedom into the world. Here we see in the modern Christian Trinity, the goddess has been removed and replaced with the dove. You have the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit represented as the dove, but there is no divine mother. The feminine has been removed and it's been replaced just by the symbol that the sacred feminine goddess was given in the ancient world, the dove, Kalun. Now we're going to see a darker aspect of how the goddess symbology is used. When we look at things, I'll do this one since it's lighter first. You have here the moon and the dove, because this is a sacrifice of how we use money, through credit, building up debt. So you have the moon and the dove on the same card for Visa, and it's a symbol of the sacred feminine being used in a depiction of sacrifice of an individual, sacrificing in a monetary sense. Here we see it being used in a very dark form as human sacrifice, because human sacrifice is still very real, very actively practiced in the world. It just isn't the practice of carrying people up a pyramid as how it was done in the past, or sacrificing them upon an altar with an obsidian blade or a dagger of some sort. Now, human sacrifice is carried out with the knowledge of everyone around us, and it is done willingly. People go off to sacrifice others and themselves in the act of war. War is modern day human sacrifice. And here you see the goddess with her wings depicted on a war memorial. And see, this is the goddess herself being sacrificed. A lot of researchers believe that it is them sacrificing people to the goddess. It isn't so much that they're sacrificing to the goddess. It's the reason the goddess is always depicted in conjunction with sacrifice is because they are sacrificing the goddess within an individual. It is the cremation of care, conscience, the protector, the grand architect of everything we experience is care. So this is the goddess herself depicted as being with these men as they are sacrificed along with the goddess. That's what war is. It's a ritual sacrifice of the sacred feminine in an act of sacrifice, of human sacrifice. So another use of the sacred feminine symbology and imagery when it comes to human sacrifice rituals or attempted human sacrifice rituals, we see this through different events that have played out that have the sacred feminine or the name of the sacred feminine embedded or encoded within the ritual or the scenario. You have the murder of Princess Diana, which I do not believe was an accident. I believe she was taken out because of her connections with the royalty of Britain, and her name was Diana, a Roman name for the goddess Diana. We saw the Superdome incident where thousands and thousands of people were hoarded into this dome looking like a feminine breast and left there without supplies, essentially to die. And FEMA did not get to this region for days after Katrina hit. And the conditions in there were horrendous. And I believe that that is a deliberately designed thing that was done to try to maximize the amount of death and suffering that happened in that feminine breast, the Superdome, a symbolic representation of a breast. And the two large school shooting incidences could be seen as very clear examples of mind control, of trauma-based mind control, were at Columbine High School, again, Columbia, Column, the dove, Columbine, and Virginia Tech, the Virgin, Virginia. Again, two names of the goddess. Again, human sacrifice rituals in disguise made to look like totally disconnected incidents. But perhaps the clearest example of human sacrifice in concealed ritual of all is the symbolic burning or immolation of the Columbia Space Shuttle. Again, the Columbia, named after the goddess Columbia, Column, the dove. And it's the white dove. And it's burning up, being immolated as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. And we see the crew was a 7-member crew. And that's correlating to the 7 planetary bodies of astrotheology. You have the 5 male gods, 5 men in the crew. You have the Sun, Mercury, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. And the 2 feminine heavenly bodies, you have Venus and the Moon. So the 7 principles of astrotheology are encoded there in the crew of the Columbia, another ritual of human sacrifice. The next symbol that I'm going to discuss is the fasci. And this is where the word fascism comes from. It is the axe surrounded by the bundle of rods. This is a Roman symbol that represents centralized authority. It is the central authority is the axe, and then the satellite regions, the satellite states, are the bundles, the rods bundled by the central Roman authority, the fasci. This is where the word fascism comes from. We see this in multiple areas when it comes to political symbology. It is on the two sides of the Senate chamber, the House chamber. It is on the fasci is depicted on the throne that Abraham Lincoln sits upon as a dominator, father figure, God figure. So he's holding both compartments of power, the church in one hand and the state in the other, because an absolute ruler must unify those two principles. It must unify political and spiritual power into one. And the regime that really attempted to do that in the modern world was the Third Reich, and here you see the Roman fasci symbol as the symbol of the Third Reich, used on one of their postage stamps. We had it previously on the back of old American dimes. Now I'm going to talk about Freemasonic symbology, and I want people to understand that Freemasonry in and of itself is not an evil ideology. Again, it is an occult system of knowledge that can be used for good, or it can be used for ill or manipulation, depending on who is wielding that knowledge. So this is the Freemasonic compasses and square with the letter G in the middle as depicted in American Freemasonry. The compasses represent higher consciousness, and they represent morality, proper moral action. The square represents base consciousness, which must be ruled by our compassion and must be ruled by our moral uprightness. The square is base consciousness. It can be seen as the reptile brain. If you look at these three components as the three complexes of the brain, okay, you have the R complex being the square. You have the neocortex with its two hemispheres being the compasses, and you have the midbrain, that which gives birth to the conscience, care, as the G in the middle of the two. It represents the goddess, the grand architect of the universe, which is care. Okay, that's what creates our experience, what we care about. And if we get into touch with conscience, it can give birth to proper moral action. But we can only do that by getting in touch with the grand architect of the universe, the God principle, the sacred within us. And that is how to get off of the square and onto the compass. See, the square traces a shape that is a square with 90-degree angles, not found in nature, rough edges. The circle traces the symbol of perfection in ancient systems of occult knowledge. The circle is perfect, it is unbroken. It is a symbol of divinity. It can never be nailed down with perfection because it is based upon pi, a figure that is a divine principle that can never be calculated with absolute certainty. So the object is to circle the square and have our compassion and our higher consciousness rule over our lower instincts and our animal instincts. And we do that through getting in touch with the care principle, the generative principle, the G, which is the grand architect of the universe, care, conscience. So it's about moral uprightness, and it can be equally seen by dark builders, by dark masons, to represent quite an opposite. This is how symbolism is in the eye of the beholder, and how the wielder of this symbol determines what it's really being used for based on their level of consciousness. So a dark mason, a rogue mason, a dark builder, so to speak, could see the symbol this way. Man is ignorant. He exists in base consciousness. And I, as one who has perfected myself, have the divine right to rule over the base man, the square, he who is on the square. So it's two different interpretations of the same symbol, one seen in a positive connotation and one seen in a manipulative, negative connotation, depending on the eye of the beholder, of the wielder of the symbol. Here's how this has been used in popular culture. In some of these examples it's subversive, in some it could be seen as an uplifting symbol. But generally in education you'll see the square used and the three symbols and the color blue for the square representing the blue lodges. And this is base consciousness. This is the base of the pyramid of this particular secret society network, the hierarchical pyramid-like structure. And you're seeing the pyramid encoded here, but through the square. And the three base levels of Freemasonry, the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason, being the three introductory or initiatory degrees of what is known as the Blue Lodge in American Freemasonry. And this is as far as many go, and it is often the degrees that are said to keep knowledge of higher levels suppressed for those really in the know of the order do not wish for those people to receive the knowledge because they have been gauged as really still being in base consciousness. And you're seeing that depicted in educational logos there. This Columbia University and that the University of Pennsylvania's shield. Here we see the compasses tracing the semicircle on the patch for the Columbia Space Shuttle mission. And one of my favorites encoding the compass and square of Freemasonry is the game of baseball, a game I've personally resonated with. But we see the compasses encoded by the foul lines here, okay, that make up first and third base. The bases form the square for the individuals in base consciousness, on the square, the base men. Okay, they're the base men. And the middle here, the mound of creation, the primordial mound, is the limbic brain, the generative principle, the feminine aspect that throws the feminine seed into play. The intuitive principle of the limbic brain, giving information to us, and it is up to us here at the place where the feminine instinct is being given to make contact with it with the male principle. Or in other words, to put it into action with the phallic symbol. You're uniting the male, the bat, and the female, the ball, and putting the feminine aspect of truth into play in the field of consciousness to get it past the base men and to make the journey from base consciousness to higher consciousness to get home. The game of baseball is completely Masonically designed. I don't see that as a negative influence. I'm just pointing out an example of how that symbology is used in the game of baseball. I personally look at that as a positive understanding. The pitcher being the feminine aspect, care, the grand architect of the game. So in these examples, I do see it as subversive. In this one, of course, the compass is used here on this logo from NASA, but we know what happened with that mission. So could be a illusion that dark Masonic elements may have been in control of that particular sacrifice. Who knows? The game of baseball, clearly Masonically designed. I look at that as a positive connotation of the symbolism. In a very negative connotation of the symbolism, we see how the Freemasonic network is used all throughout the United States in control agencies, in agencies of male dominator control, in this example being police. And these examples are certainly Blue Lodge degrees, Blue Lodge orders, lower orders of Masonry, and I would look at the individuals belonging to these groups and other fraternal orders of police as being on the square. And if anybody thinks that when someone tells you in Freemasonic parlance that you're on the square, that they're paying you a compliment, you have no idea what the term means, because you've just been insulted by being told that you're on the square. It's not a symbol of being fairness and uprightness. It is the square in Freemasonry is most certainly a symbol of base consciousness, of not understanding the true self. And when someone is told that they're on the square in Freemasonry, it is essentially an insult. And we see that this network of secret societies is actually at work in these controlling orders of police. And I look at that as a very subversive symbol, because these fraternal orders have more allegiance to the secret oaths than they've sworn than to actually do the job to uphold the Constitution and to protect the public. And it can be really used as a means of one hand washes the other. I'll do a favor for you if you look the other way in this instance, or do what I tell you to do here. And it's really a way that freedom can be subverted through this hierarchical order, particularly when it is used in conjunction with controlling bodies like the police. So this is an extremely important symbol that's going to carry over into what we talk about next. This is the first degree Masonic tracing board, and I'm going to cover this from two angles, a positive connotation and a negative connotation. So here we see, first, there are directions. This is a map. You see north, south, east, and west. So we are standing at the west, looking east. The west is down here, the east is up here. We see that there is a checkered floor of black and white squares representing base consciousness. This is the checkered life of a man who is not born in consciousness. He does not know light from dark. He is a wanderer, a pawn in the game, so to speak. One who can be positioned. However, his master may wish him positioned, the chess master of the game, who sees the whole board from above, from a higher level of consciousness, and takes the pieces and positions them as he will. This is one who is in duality. Here's the pillars, the dual pillars. This is the pillar of Jachin. It is a masculine pillar, represented as a Doric column, and you have the sun ruling that pillar. It's the pillar of strength, the S representing strength. The feminine side of the pillar is the pillar of Boaz. The B at the bottom stands for beauty. It is a Corinthian pillar, a elaborate, ornate, feminine pillar. And the moon sits above that pillar. This is the pillars that represent the masculine and feminine aspects of human consciousness. And it is how we enter the world with these two principles kind of in opposition, and it's our goal to understand them and to unite them as one. To use our will power. This is the pillar of will or wisdom, which the W stands for. It is Jacob's ladder. Jacob, as described in the story of Genesis, goes to a higher level of consciousness. He experiences God consciousness. He comes back down to the earth and understands that really the journey of life is to get back to that level of pure awareness and pure consciousness. And that is the end of the journey, kind of. It's like you enter in this dual state, seeing things as separate, and then the object is to make it through the realm of duality, the checkerboard floor, and unite the two principles as one, and then you're born into the stars, into the light of conscience and consciousness. So that's the journey up Jacob's ladder. And we see here in the background the stones known as the ashlars, the rough ashlar representing the soul in need of work, and the perfect ashlar representing the state of perfection to which we seek to attain. The initiates are going up the ladder in the 3 basic degrees of Masonry. entered apprentice who is still on the floor, the fellow craft who is in the middle, who has not received the key, which is tied here to the ladder, but he's at the G where conscience is beginning to be born, the care principle, and the master mason who gets the key to unlock the star gate, the sun, so to speak, is bringing himself to a place of balance and understanding and enlightenment. So it's a powerful and positive connotation. It could also be used to represent the left brain and the right brain, the male and female yang and yin energies, and the object is to unify them in the middle to awaken the prefrontal cortex and the pineal gland to awaken our star gate. Okay, and that's in the direction of the east. The direction of the light, the rising sun, is in the east. We don't want to be headed west. That's the direction of base consciousness, and darkness, the setting sun. The sun sets in the west, of course. So powerful symbology there, but it unravels even more when we consider this tracing board on its side, as I will show you. Again, here we're seeing the three lights in the heavens, the lights of Freemasonry, the lights of the religions, the sun, the moon, and the all-seeing eye, the stars and planets. Again, we saw the religions of Christianity, Islam, and Judaism representative of these principles, and how they correlate to the three pillars of Freemasonry and global consciousness. Now, looking at the Freemasonic tracing board on its side opens up a whole nother level of what this symbolically represents. So again, we're given directions. Here is the west, here is the east, this is the south, and this is the north. Understanding what we now understand about astrotheology, we can now understand what this whole scene really depicts. It depicts the spiritual journey of man out of the prison vibration that is on the earth, identification with the physical world of matter. This is the earth. It's black and white, the colors of a prisoner, okay? The prison planet, so to speak. And these are the lines of latitude and longitude of the earth. This is the Earth's equator, right here, the middle pillar. This is the Tropic of Cancer. This is the Tropic of Capricorn. In the southern hemisphere, the Tropic of Cancer in the northern hemisphere. Here we see the light of Freemasonry, the sun in the east, away from the earth. And this is the sun at the summer solstice. This is the sun at the winter solstice, when the northern hemisphere is in darkness, depicted as the moon there. We're not in enlightenment, right? This is the pillar of mercy, because when the sun is up there, the sun favors the northern hemisphere. It shows mercy upon the northern hemisphere. Boaz is considered the pillar of severity, because the sun does not favor the northern hemisphere when it is at the pillar of Boaz, or the Tropic of Capricorn. And this is the equator. This would be balance, or the equinoxes, the all-seeing eye, is the place that opens up when the hemispheres of the brain come into a perfect state of balance. So this is the journey of the initiate, from darkness, starting here on the earth in darkness, and then proceeding in a stepwise fashion to a place of balance. Okay, this is emotion. This is the sacred feminine principle of emotion. You have to care enough to begin the journey. You go higher. You're trying to reach a place of balance between these energies, and then you can get that key right there to unlock the star gate. Okay, to unlock, and that's accomplished through action. The male principle of putting your emotions and your thoughts into action, and that is how you get off of the base consciousness and to the stars. Powerful iconography, powerful symbology being used here if you know how to read it. Now, In a negative connotation, a dark builder, a dark mason, may want to look at this symbol in a perverted way. So here's a reversal of it. You see, yes, this is base consciousness and this is higher consciousness, but they'll look at this symbol and say, well, the latter is tilted across toward the left, toward the sun only, and away from the feminine pillar, away from the moon. And our task is to imbalance consciousness toward the male principle only, or the left brain only, because that's what gives birth to a dominator, to one who is bent upon control, a sorcerer of sorts. So this is how a dark occultist would interpret this symbol. I'm God, my will be done. I will use my influence to take those in base consciousness and give them the dark light. Make them think that they're being initiated into something important. Well, what I'm really doing is imbalancing consciousness to the left brain. And that is what some people are doing with certain individuals who enter Blue Lodge degrees in rogue lodges of Freemasonry. And they're using that knowledge to create more mind-controlled dominators that will listen to them, follow their orders, and they're not really receiving the true light. They're receiving the dark light of male left brain imbalance. That is one way that dark manipulators will see a very powerful, positive, connotative symbol and pervert it and turn it into something completely negative. And here is how that process is used. We see this extremely subversively when it comes to the iconography that is used on police uniforms. Particularly, here's the floor of the house representing base consciousness, the pawn, the checkered man, who cannot understand the difference between light and dark. He doesn't really understand what makes the principles of right and wrong function the way that they do. Conscience isn't born in an individual that simply follows orders. Anyone of true conscience would always ask the question, why, before carrying out any action or order given to them by anyone. And we see this, if we look at the symbol of the Fraternal Order of Police having a Masonic third-degree handshake and the all-seeing eye of Freemasonry there, and the three other corners of the pentagram representing the three blue lodge degrees. We also see here the three pillars, and now they're in their proper orientation with the checkerboard floor in between them, with the dual pillars being here and the one pillar being unified at the top. And in that orientation, we see that it forms an inverted pentagram as opposed to a right side up one, just as it is here in the Victoria Police's logo, clearly an inverted five-pointed star, and it is placed along with the checkered floor right around the Temple of Solomon, and then directly on top of the prefrontal neocortex, the third eye. The inverted pentagram, which we already talked about as an extremely subversive symbol representing the destruction of spirit and the burial of spirit into the ground beneath the material world. And here we see the double square, another symbol of base consciousness representing the hypercube, which I'll get into, on the third eye on a English police's headdress. So, and there again, the checkerboard floor of the house wrapped around the Temple of Solomon. The temple, the sun and the moon, the left and the right brain. And that's what the symbol actually represents. The Masonic tracing board represents in Freemasonry the Temple of Solomon, the temple within man. It is a representation of the brain, the temple within man, the Temple of Solomon, the brain complex. So that is how it is used. And here is a 33rd degree Freemason who I do not consider to be a negative or evil person. I think he understood a lot about what Freemasonry was and how it was used and what its true purpose is. But he did talk about some of how the negative aspects of Freemasonry are used. This is Manly P. Hall. He said that Masonry conceals its secrets from all except the adepts and sages of the elect, and uses false explanations and misinterpretations of its symbols to mislead those who deserve to be misled, to conceal the truth which it calls light from them, and to draw it away from them. He's saying that those who are really not in the know, that often would pervert the ideas and the knowledge, are deliberately misled away from this knowledge so as not to let it fall into the wrong hands. I often think that as well, in Freemasonry, it is being done deliberately to try to create people who, those who really are in the knowledge of how consciousness works, can manipulate for their own gain and get them to do what they want, because they're dangling a carrot, so to speak, before them and saying, I have the higher level knowledge if you'll do what I tell you, and then I'll let you have it. When in fact they're just being led like I said, like a donkey with a carrot at the end of the stick. Manly P. Hall said that the blue degrees are but the outer court of the portico of the temple, the porch of the Temple of Solomon, hence the term porch masons. Part of the symbols are displayed to the initiate, but he is intentionally misled by false interpretations. It is not intended that he shall understand them, but it is intended that he shall imagine that he understands them. Their true explication is reserved for the adepts, the princes of Masonry, one of the highest level Freemasons in Masonic tradition, telling you right out in the open what the Blue Lodge degrees are for. And of course, the Fraternal Order of Police is Blue Lodge degrees of Masonry. So that's Masonic symbology and some variants of how it is used. The next, I'm going to talk about talismanic symbology and how it is used on our money. So this will be a very big part of this part of the lecture. This symbol is one of the most important symbols in all symbology. It is the most prominent symbol on our $1 bill. It is one of the most viewed symbols on earth, and very few people understand what it really means. I'm going to break it completely down from top to bottom and go through each element and attempt to explain it as fully and as clearly as possible. This is the symbol of all the mystery traditions. Okay? Very simply, it is the symbol of all occultism. Of course, it is Egyptian in its thematic representation, and its symbolic representation. It is Egyptian, and there is a reason for that. We see the elements of the symbol being the words Anuit Coepus at the top. Then we have a pyramid with its capstone missing. The capstone is cut off, so it is an incomplete pyramid. Atop the pyramid, as a two-dimensional slit in the sky, it could be seen, a two-dimensional opening or a rift in the sky. From behind that we see an eye, and that eye is bathed in light. The pyramid is comprised of 13 courses of brick, the bottom of which has a date inscribed on it in Roman numerals, 9 Roman numerals. There is then a sash with the words Novus Ordo Seclorum written on it at the bottom. So we have to understand each element. Each element is here not by accident, it is there by design, and the makers of this sigil, because that's what this is a sigil, which is comprised of many symbols, put nothing on it by accident. And everything has a meaning in this. So let's start to break down the symbols one at a time. Anuit Coepus is Latin. It means Annuit means to favor or to look favorably upon. Coeptus is an enterprise, an undertaking, or a project, a work in progress, you could say. So Annuit Coeptus means he favors, could mean she favors, it favors, our project. He favors our work. He favors our work in progress. Okay, so he favors our work is a good translation. Novus Ordo Seclorum is often hotly contested as to its meaning. Novus means new, Ordo means order or way, and seclorum is the debated word. So I go to a Latin dictionary and I look up the word saeclorum, S-A-E-C-L-O-R-U-M. This is because people will say seclorum means of the ages. So I'm looking up the word saeclorum, and that means age, generation, people born at a time, race, present time, or age, century. So if this phrase said the new order of the ages, we should see an A in between that S and E there. It would say Novus Ordo Saeclorum, but it says Seclorum. So clearly that's not the definition. Many people will say that that's what it means. It does not mean of the ages. Okay? The word seclorum is put into a Latin dictionary, and then you see it is a word modification, a truncation. CL is derived from CUL. So an internal CL might be rendered by CUL, thus giving us seculorum. And seculum, seculi, is a noun that means world, universe. Secular, temporal, earthly, or worldly affairs, cares, or temptation. So, clearly, I think this can be solved and agreed upon once and for all, so we don't have to hear this incorrect, connotatively incorrect translation, the new order of the ages. This phrase clearly says New World Order. And that's it. That's what it says. Let's lay this to rest once and for all. Okay? So, he favors our work, the New World Order. And you have an eye in the triangle looking out from another dimension of space into our realm. The light is pouring through the scene from that realm, and a pyramid is being built. So, he favors our work, the New World Order. Who favors the work? What is the work? And what is the New World Order? So, clearly, this is the being that favors the work. This project is the work that's being done. Okay, this is the incomplete project. This is the date that the project could be begun or finished, depending on how we look at the seal. So, we have to understand a little bit about Egyptian cosmology and the main solar god, the solar disk, which we looked at as Horus, as Ra. Set is the dark incarnation of it. Really, all of these principles could be encapsulated as one solar god known as Aten, or Aton. Depending on the spelling, it could be spelled A-T-O-N or A-T-E-N. So, Akhenaten of 18th dynasty Egypt was actually named after this. He's a pharaoh of 18th dynasty. He brought in the concept into Egyptian cosmology of a one God that is the overarching ruling aspect of everything, known as the Aten. And he named himself after this god. Akhenaten means the spirit of the Aten, the solar god. So that is the being here, the Aten. Now that could mean a couple of things depending on how we look at this symbol. But let's just let it be seen as it is the solar principle, the solar god, the god of light, the bringer of light. So it could be also seen as the word Lucifer. Lucifer comes from two Latin words, lux, meaning light, and fere, meaning to bear or to bring or to carry. So it is the bringer, the carrier of light. Now, this could mean two different things. We have to understand that Lucifer and the Aten are the same basic principle, the same symbolic principle, and they are essentially, they are a dual god. There is a light aspect of the sun god, the one that brings true light of awareness, and then there is the dark aspect of light. So one can be truly illuminated and really possess the light, really possess the knowledge, and then there is one who can be born into the dark light. Those who have knowledge of how things really work, but the way they're using it is for the ego. Being my will be done because I view myself as God and separate from everyone else, and I am out there to manipulate and rule them. So either way you look at that symbol there, it is the Aten or Lucifer. It doesn't matter whether you're looking at that symbolically as positive or negative, and I will go over both interpretations, both the positive and negative. However, it can in both aspects, this entity could be seen as Aten or Lucifer. Keep that in mind. If you take the compass and square symbol and place the apex at the top of this symbol and the base at the same base level where the pyramid meets the ground, you're going to see a very interesting thing emerge. If we just trace the 5 points of the compasses and squares, the 2 compasses, the 2 edges of the square, and then the middle part that both share, the line of symmetry between them. So we go down the compass edges and we see that the compass points point to 2 letters. The 2 end letters of this sash, okay? N and M. N from Novus, M in Seclorum. Then we go up the place where the square is used to measure from, the inside edge of the square. And we see that that also points to 2 letters, and they are also both on the opposite edge of this phrase, Anuit Coeptus. So we have the A in Anuit and the S in Coeptus. And now we come down the horizontal axis of symmetry. And we see it reaches 1 letter that is exactly in the middle of this sash, the O from Urdu. These 5 letters, if rearranged, are an anagram for the word Mason, M-A-S-O-N. And this is the symbol of all Masonry. It is the symbol of all builders. And who are the builders? We all are the builders. We are all collectively on this planet the co-creators of our collective experience. Whether we are doing that creation unconsciously or consciously creating our experience, we are the builders of this world. And this is what we've built it into, what we currently have right now. So, who are the builders? We are the builders. But there's 2 different types of masons. See, there are masons that build with stone. They build the pyramid upward. They're building with stone. If you connect these 5 symbols as they are connotatively used in this seal, they form an inverted, skewed pentagram. And an inverted, skewed pentagram, if you look into dark occultic symbology, is always used as a symbol of pacts. It's a symbol of pacts, of promises made, to be something to be fulfilled, to be delivered upon completion of something else. So Again, we saw that these four arms represent the material world, depicted as the upward pointing pyramid, the brick, the physical object, and they are crushing the spirit, the fifth element, into the ground, burying it under the weight of the pyramid. See, the dark builders, the dark masons, those who are building toward a world of male domination, the blade. See, they're building with bricks. The bricks are people who are trapped in physical five-sense reality and left-brain prisonhood. They are those who can not change. They have one form and it's hardened. A brick was once malleable clay that could be shaped, molded, take different forms. It flows easily. Change comes easily to it. But when it is baked in the left brain, solar, male dominator consciousness, it becomes hard and immobile and immovable. It becomes a brick. And that's what the male dominator world is being built with. The bricks baked into one form, the unit form. Those in uniform cannot see what is, not see. They cannot see, they are not sees. See? They are baked into one form, the brick. Okay? And they're being used as elements to build the blade world. And the blade world will be ruled by those who are in the light. They are the blade, the male dominator sorcerers. They have the light, but everyone else is in ignorance. And when you complete this structure, the light goes out from the scene. See, they're building the blade. If you complete this structure in brick, they have all the light, and the entire world is bathed in darkness. In that symbol, the Aten or Lucifer represents the sorcerer, and he is completely trapped in ego. The ego-bound consciousness. It's the I in the triangle. I am God, the sorcerer says to the world. And I will make everyone in this world and the entire world in my own image and likeness. But I will have all the light, and the light will be blocked out to those in ignorance and in one form. And the male dominator world will be born into existence, and it will bathe the world forever in darkness. That's the negative connotation of this symbol. See, you'll notice it's the blade without the chalice. See, these other 3 points make the chalice, but it's gone, it's ghosted. Just like it's been ghosted through human sacrifice, through the cremation of care. Right? It's been ghosted through the removal of the sacred feminine from the Trinity, and through not caring about what goes on in the world. The sacred feminine is removed, it's ghosted, but the male principle is embodied in stone. And that's the project, that the New World Order project that the Dark Masons, the builders with brick, are building into manifestation. Now, there is a light side of this symbol. Again, he favors our project, the New World Order. If the true God of creation, the true bringer of light, the awakened neocortex, the prefrontal cortex, the opening of the third eye, the stone the builders rejected, the Christ consciousness, so to speak, the true bringer of light, right? The true aspect of Aten, the solar mind, right? If we, as The other kind of Mason are trying to are trying to do the work that he favors, the true bringer of light, the true God of creation, and create the positive New World Order. Our job as the builders of this project is to remove the brick from the top down, a little at a time, from those who we can help to work, smaller groups, gradually removing and helping people to change in larger and larger and larger groups. And if that pyramid is razed to the ground, is removed from the scene, there's nothing to block out that light of creation. And it comes down and joins with the earth. So the earth is not bathed in darkness of the male dominator blade world. Instead, it's bathed in light because the bricks are gone. Those who cannot change are gone. They've made the change, the metamorphosis, the transfiguration, the transformation in consciousness. And they've been raised to a higher level of awareness. So that's the opposite, the positive New World Order. Masons often tear stone down. And the light mason, the light builder, the light worker wants to tear this stone down so the light comes down and join up with the earth to create the positive New World Order. And in that aspect, this is a powerful, magnificent symbol of the true mystery traditions. The object is to remove that pyramid of male domination and bring the light down to the earth. So we see that this is the symbol of Solomon encoded into it. The male aspect, here's the the yang, light aspect of consciousness, combined with the feminine yin, dark aspect of consciousness to create the seal of Solomon. As above, so below. The Hermetic principle encoded into the seal of Solomon. So depicted there. But it is the body unified with the spirit within the temple of man, the mind, the sun and the moon, the left and the right brain, to create the stone, the philosopher's stone, the opening of the third eye, the pineal gland, known as the stone the builders rejected. Because the dark builders reject that light of awareness and consciousness, and they are trying to block it out by completing that pyramid in stone. So that is my analysis of that symbol, and it's amazing when you get into it and really study it for yourself and really go deep into the symbology. And it gets even better when you start to look at that date on the bottom of the pyramid, because that date is MDCCLXXVI in Roman numerals, and that totals 1776. And here's how it breaks down. This is a chart of the letters and their corresponding numerical values. So if you just do the math, M is 1000, D is 500, C is 100, you have it twice there, so you're up to 1700. L is 50, that's 1750. X is 10, which you have twice, so that's 1770. V is 5, that's 1775. And I is 1, 1776. So what we're going to do now is something called gematria. It is Kabbalistic numerology. It's an occultic form of numerology, and it's very simple. It is simple addition or counting of these numbers. And we can combine them in different ways depending on which numerals we add together. And we understand that all of the added values are identical, and they mean the same thing in occultic numerology. So 1776 is the number that we get when we add these Roman numeral values together. And what we are going to do in this example is we're just going to take the 1 and add it to the 6 and leave these two 7s. So we get 777. And anyone familiar with Judaism or Kabbalah may know that that is a symbol of God. It's a number that represents the Trinity of consciousness in its perfect form. The 777 is the aspect of the divine in man. It is thought, emotion, and action, the three aspects of our consciousness, having reached the place of the gods, the seven entities of the skies: the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. The seven gods that can be seen with the ancient world, a representation of the seven chakras of energy in the body. So 7 is a symbol of completion, perfection, and God. It tripled is a representation of God. So if we add the 3 sevens together, it totals 21. And 2 plus 1, this is the parents and the child, the father and mother, the creator God and the sacred feminine, and the divine child. And then that totals 3. 2 plus 1 is 3. So all of these values can be seen as identical, or they mean the same thing. They are numbers that represent God, or completion, perfection. The divine has been awakened and realized. So they can be used interchangeably in systems of occultism. And again, 3 being the number of unity, of unification of thought, emotion, and action, the triune being, the 3-in-1 God, right? The Trinity. So, what I'm going to do in this study of gematria is I'm going to take these letters, because gematria is a combination of geometry and mathematics. Geometry, Gea, earth, this measure of things, the measure of the earth, the mother, right? And matria, mathematics, the mother science, after Ma'at from Egypt, the mother goddess. So gematria is a combination of geometry and mathematics. So we have all the elements in place. We have the math aspect is covered by the Roman numerals that represent value or mathematics, and we have the shape that's given by the triangle shape or the pyramid shape. So we're just going to combine the two by taking, we have 9 letters, and we're given a shape that has three vertices. So we're just going to duplicate the shape 3 times, and we're going to place the letters at the vertices of the shape. So we'll start with M and put it at the top of the first triangle, and then D, C at the base, and then repeat it 3 times. M, D, C, C, L, X, X, V, I. And now we're going to substitute the numerical values for the Roman numerals. So we get this. We get 1,000, 500, 100. 100, 50, 10. 10, 5, 1. So you see a pattern emerge there. At the top of the pyramid, in every example, we see a clear pattern. 1,110. Now, in mathematics, those are known as powers of 10, or powers of 10, at 10, powers of at 10, at the top of the pyramid. Because at 10, no matter how you look at it, is at the top of the pyramid. This is a play on words that works out in the English language, and it is not an accident. These are perfect numbers of base 10 numerology, base 10 mathematics. And the powers of a 10, the powers of at 10, are indeed at the top of the pyramid. At the bottom of the pyramid, we have 500, 100, 50, 10, 5, and 1. If we add those for each base, we have 600 at the base here and 1,000 at the top. 60 at the base here, 100 at the top. 6 at the base here, and 10 at the top. We can then simply remove all the zeros, because zeros don't add to anything in gematria. so they can be removed. So we see that it simply boils down to this. 1's at the top, 6's at the bottom. And now we can combine them into one pyramid. And you have at the top 1, 1, 1, where the three pillars, the three aspects of consciousness, thought, emotion, and action, the three pillars of Freemasonry. At the bottom, 666. 666, the number of beast or base consciousness. And noticing that 3 correlates to 777, because if you add 777, you get 21. If you add 2 plus 1, you get 3. So 777 and 3 are identical. So you could simply substitute 777 for anything that totals 3, like 1 plus 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3, so we could simply put 777 up there and substitute for 111. They're identical because they both add to 3. So we have God at the top, the light, the beast or base consciousness of illusion and identification with the physical world at the bottom of the pyramid, captured in stone, in one form that cannot change. Illusion, ego identification. So if now we reduce them again. So we add 7 plus 7 plus 7, we get 21. We add 6 plus 6 plus 6, we get 18. And this is what is meant by counting the number of the beast. That's what we're in the process of doing. It's a prescription for gematria given in the book of Revelation in the Bible. We add 21, and of course, as we saw, that totals 3, the number of God, and 18, 1 plus 8 totals 9, the number of ego and illusion. Why is 9 the number of ego and illusion? Well, here's why. The number 9 has very significant mathematical properties, and they are shown to us in addition to the number 9 and in multiplication of the number 9. So this side of the table is an addition table, this side of the table is a multiplication table. 9 plus 1 is 10. 1 plus 0 reduces to 1. We're simply adding the final result, the digits of the final result together. So look, we're back at where we started adding to 9. 1. So adding the 9 was like adding 0. Okay? 9 plus 2 is 11. 1 plus 1 reduces to 2. It adds to 2. So we're back to 2. So again, adding the 9 was like adding the 0. You do this with any number. 9 plus any number gets you back to the same number once the result is added together, or what is called in gematria reduction. You're reducing a 2-digit or 3-digit or 4-digit value down to one number. You will ultimately come back to the same value that you started with, because to add 9 is to add illusion, or to add ego, or to add base consciousness. And when you add the beast, when you add base consciousness, you can never affect any change in value. You bring no value to the equation. You are adding 0. You are adding nothing. You are adding illusion. Now, the multiplication of 9 is a different result. 9 times 1 is 9. 9 times 2, 18. Add the 1 and the 8, you get 9. 9 times 3, 27. Add 2 plus 7, you get 9. 9 times any number, no matter what it is. You add the resultant digits, you will come back to 9. So what this is saying symbolically is multiplying base consciousness only gets you more base consciousness. You can never create anything new with ego and illusion and base consciousness. So this is why 9 is the number of illusion and base consciousness, and as such, it is synonymous with 666, or the number of the beast. One thing I should mention is that the date 1776 is simultaneously the year that the Declaration of Independence was signed in the United States, and it is a document declaring human sovereignty, and that our rights come from our Creator, whatever we happen to envisage that Creator or that force as, and not from man. But it also is the date of the birth of the Bavarian Illuminati order, and that happened on May 1st, 1776, which is a Luciferian dark occultic Sabbath known as Walpurgisnacht. May 1st, May Day of 1776 is when the official Bavarian Illuminati, the Order of the Illuminated, came into being. So there's a dualism even inherent in that date. You can look at the Dark New World Order building upward from 1776 in earnest, from the time when this dark occultic order came into manifestation, and the object of the Light New World Order, to bring the light down by removing the bricks and getting back to the understanding of personal sovereignty as encoded in the Declaration of Independence. When we look at it, we see that these two numbers, 777 representing God or completion or perfection, and 666 representing illusion or base consciousness, they total 9 and 3, and that brings us to the occultic number 93. To go from the illusion to the real, to go from the illusion to the true source of power, to go from base consciousness to divine consciousness or compassion. And that is the process of going from the 9 to the 3, because the 9 drops away, it's illusion. 9 plus 3 is 12. 1 plus 2 goes back to 3. So the 9 falls away, being illusion. To go from the 9 to the 3, and this is a number that represents willpower. We make this journey by an act of personal will, and it is an act of love. Love and will, we will see later, are identical forces. Keep the number 93 in mind. The next way that symbolism is used subversively is in architecture. So this is the pyramid outside of the Louvre, the art museum in Paris, and it is a symbol of a pyramid, upward pointing, male pyramid, and it is comprised of exactly 666 panes of glass. So again, the base consciousness is encoded into the shape, and you see that the pyramid forms slightly off of a right angle, almost an exact right angle at the top, at its apex. Here we see the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and we see from overhead, this arc is a solar symbol. You could see this as a point of male energy, these 12 streets being the 12 houses of the zodiac, all converging on the Arc de Triomphe with the rays of the sun around it. Could look at this as the unification of the two pillars, the arch, the point in the middle where the two become one, and they join together the male and the female principles. We see the masculine principle encoded in the Eiffel Tower. It is in 3 levels, just like the 3 degrees of masonry. You have the entered apprentice, the fellow craft, and the master mason, the 3 levels of the Eiffel Tower. It is illuminated at light, and it is a phallic symbol. The illuminated pyramid at the Louvre. At the base of the Louvre, underneath, if you go underneath this pyramid, the Hermetic principle is encoded by a downward pointing pyramid over top of an upward pointing one, where spirit and matter joining together, as above, so below. Here we see St. Peter's Square, the Vatican, and we see the sun god, the cross of the zodiac and the great cross of the galaxy at St. Peter's Square, and we have the phallic symbol of Osiris, the obelisk in the middle. Osiris being a sun god in Egyptian cosmology. The pentagram in the pentagon being the central part of a inverted pentagram encoded into Washington, D.C., the heart of the inverted pentagram. The Pentagon being the center of defense intelligence for the United States, where war is planned, human sacrifice. We see from overhead in Washington, D.C., this right here is the White House. And then north of the White House, we see an inverted, skewed pentagram with one broken arm. Now, this is a very clear example of what is known as the pentagram of Pax in dark occultism. The pentagram of Pax is inverted because it is satanic, or it is thrusting the spirit downward. It is often skewed, representing that which is really out of alignment or proportion. So it is usually skewed in one form or another, either stretched or squashed. In this case, it is kind of squashed downward. And we also have a broken arm. And a broken arm in a pentagram represents a pact that has not yet been fully completed or fulfilled. So that which is promised has not yet been delivered because a work is still in progress. And I think we can understand the meaning of that broken arm by understanding what the pentagram of Pax represents. So it is not that they simply weren't able to complete that in some way. It is intentionally left broken. And this is one of the arguments against it actually being an occult symbol. Well, if it was occult leaders that made it, could they not have completed the last arm? They did not want to complete the last arm. It is intentionally made to be a pentagram of Pax, and that arm is left broken for a very specific occult reason. The phallic symbol of Osiris, encoded as the Washington Monument, a male symbol of phallic energy. It's in direct alignment with the symbol of the feminine energy, which is Congress. Congress being another word for sexual union. Congress. And the Congress building is the feminine principle. It's the dome of the feminine breast with the goddess statue of Columbia, or freedom, atop the dome, representing the feminine energy, and it is reflected in the water. The water being the principle of the moon goddess, the goddess of the water. The moon's light is reflected in the waters at night. So this also encodes in this reflecting pool the Hermetic principle, as above, so below, as goes on in consciousness in the earth is reflected from the heavens, reflected in the external experience that we have. Other sexual symbols or phallic symbols seen in the layout of Washington, D.C. Here we have the Washington Monument. Here we have the Lincoln Memorial, which is a temple to the king. It's a reflection of Osiris the king, ruling as over the dominions of church and state, as we saw with Lincoln in his king's chamber, so to speak, holding the symbol of the fasci on both his left and right hand while seated upon his throne. And if we look at the street system that connects these two monuments, we just make a red. We can make a red outline of the street system around these two monuments and just fill in that area, and that is what it looks like. It is clearly a phallic symbol. That is directing male energies encoded into the actual layout of the streets. People who believe in this system of geomancy, or tapping the energy of the earth through the types of lines that you place upon the earth, believe that this is directing male and female energies in certain ways and in certain proportions. So you have the feminine egg here next to the male phallus. This is called the ellipse on the south side of the White House. Again, Lincoln holding the fasci, the symbol of the fasces is the symbol of Roman centralized authority encoded in the central axe around which is the bundle of rods or staffs. Now, east of that Washington Monument phallic symbol, we have a 13-level pyramid. Again, 13 on the back of the dollar bill, a solar number, the sun and the 12 houses of the zodiac, with the 14th level being the unification of the earth, air, water, and fire, culminating at the 14th level of the pyramid. 1 plus 4 is 5. So you have the earth, air, water, fire, and spirit unified at the top level of the pyramid. So here we have a 13-level pyramid with the capstone missing, and around the streets, around this is the Congress building, the Capitol building, around the streets, the path that creates the streets, going all the way around the Capitol building, forms an image of an owl that sits atop this 13-level pyramid with the capstone cut off in the street system of Washington, D.C. If we trace the pyramid and then we trace 2 streets that shoot off from near the top of the pyramid, we see that there is a Freemasonic compass and square encoded into the layout of the streets as well. I'll take that off and do it one more time for you to see where those streets are. Here's a close-up of it. There's the owl. I'm removing it and then putting it back so you can clearly see the layout. This image was taken from Google Earth. And the owl, again, is that Babylonian deity that the Ammonites worshipped. They often worshipped it as Molech, and here it surrounds the sacred feminine. Again, it's the same principle as codified in the cremation of care ritual. The sacred feminine of conscience, of care, is being sacrificed to the Babylonian owl/bull god, Molech. It's in the belly of the beast. And overhead, above this complex here, where the owl is and the Capitol layout, we see the seal of Solomon encoded into the street plan, representing the feminine aspect that ends at the Capitol building, the feminine, okay, and then the male aspect ends at this place right here, which is known as Lincoln Park. And Lincoln Park is a resonator for Lincoln, who sits in the King's Chamber, the male principle. So you have the Queen or the Goddesses building, and then you have Lincoln Park here, which is a representation of the male energy, and it's a symbolic correlation to Lincoln's name, who sits in the King's Chamber at the Lincoln Memorial. This is the entire occult layout of Washington, D.C., and there's even more in this layout, which I don't have time to go into, but studying the occultic orientations of the layouts of the street systems of many cities is very interesting, and there's all kinds of symbology encoded into it. It could be a presentation in and of itself. The last symbol that I'm going to talk about in this symbology section is the hypercube. And this is one of the deepest symbols of all occultism, which very few people really delve into and get into the meaning of. The hypercube represents 4-dimensional space and time. The next level the next higher dimension from the 3-dimensional world that we inhabit. So you have a point that represents no dimension. You have a line that represents a 1 dimension, that you can go forward or backward. You have a plane. You extrude the line and you get a plane. Now you have a 2-dimensional object. Then you extrude the plane into a 3rd dimension and you get a cube. So that's what our 3-dimensional world is like. 3D. You have a single cube. You have length, width, and depth. But then if you extrude a cube, you take the cube and you pull it and you extrude it that way, you get what's called a hypercube. So this is a four-dimensional object. It is derived by unfolding a cube into all of the dimensions of each one of the planes of the cube. And you get this object. When you look at the hypercube ideology, it is representative of the mind existing inside the construct of matter. So you have matter being the outer part of the cube, and then mind is the inner part of the cube. Okay, so this correlates to this level of body, mind, spirit levels of consciousness that we saw in part 1. And we see that the hypercube is derived when we combine matter, represented by the red square, and spirit, represented by the green square. We see that that is everything that is. Okay? That is the universe, or the world of matter, the world of spirit, coming into manifestation as matter to experience itself subjectively. And that is the large cube that is derived from that union. See, that's the large cube. The unification of body or matter and spirit is the large cube. And then the inner cube is the mind. That is where body and spirit combine. They merge in the realm of mind. So that's the inner part of the cube. So if we put the outer cube over top of the inner cube, we see that the hypercube is actually a cube within a cube. And again, this part of the cube in the center is the experience of mind. This part of the cube in the outside is the physical world of manifestation that the spirit comes down and inhabits to create that which can have experiences. This is the two-dimensional projection of this four-dimensional object, a cube rotated around in every plane that it can be rotated in. It's a complex, heady idea. If you look on the internet for some graphic depictions or animations of a hypercube, you can get a clearer idea of what it is in your mind. But the idea is that to look at the cube in a dark way, the hypercube in a dark way, means that you are seeing the physical world as a prison, and that's the large box. The big box on the outside is the physical world that imprisons spirit. See, this is a negative worldview that says all the physical world is really a prison. And it's a horrible thing, a horrible place. It's not a construct for experience of spirit to descend into physical form so that it may come to know itself more fully. It's a horrible thing that is, a prison. And that's the way that a dark occultist looks at the dark hypercube and the hypercube symbology. The inside of the cube is the mind that is held captive within the body. So you have the prison of mind being held in the larger prison of the physical world of matter. And this is its two-dimensional projection, which looks like an octagon. So this is a symbol of mind control. The octagon is a symbol of base consciousness. It is the symbol of the controlled mind, the small cube, being held in the large cube, the prison of matter. So it's a dark worldview concept that represents the double prison. The prison of mind held in the cage of matter. And what do we see the hypercube or the octagon used to represent? We see it as a male dominator sport that involves the potential of destroying the brain. Extremely violent male dominator sports, cage fighting, where the brain isn't respected. Go into a cage and smash your opponent into unconsciousness and do all kinds of damage to the brain. The octagonal hat, the 8-cornered hat that law enforcement officers wear. It's another total assault on the consciousness of people who take the jobs as enforcers or controllers. They're being told symbolically, your consciousness is of the hypercube. It's of the octagon. The octagon is placed on the crown chakra, just like the square. We saw in the other example, the double square on the English police's hat, right here on the forehead, on the third eye. Again, the double square is representative of the octagon, the 2 squares being combined in an 8-sided shape. If you complete the corners, you get the octagon if you connect the corners. But the 8-cornered hat is the octagon being worn on top of the crown chakra as another occultic insult, an insult in symbolism to the mind-controlled controllers, the controllers who they themselves are under deep forms of mind control to do a job that is a deeper suppression of their spirit and others. Because the hypercube is seen in one more place, and it is ubiquitous. It is everywhere. It is on every metropolitan street corner, the stop sign. Encoded in red, and it has the word stop written on it, and this is saying to the consciousness, stop. Stop the journey. Stop your movement. Stop the progression of spirit. Just stop and stay in the double prison. Stay in the hypercube. The prison of mind encoded and captured in the prison of matter. The hypercube is one of the more difficult symbols to really grasp the deep connotative understanding of the symbolism of it. But once you understand it, you will see it in many places, and it is definitely used as a subversive symbol in most instances, particularly in cage fighting, in the uniform and emblems of controllers, particularly the 8-cornered hat of police, and most ubiquitously in the stop sign that we see all over Western culture. This brings us finally to the last part of the methods of manipulation, and the last one is the biggest of them all, chaos sorcery. What has been known as the Hegelian dialectic, or problem, reaction, solution. And we're going to talk about what the Hegelian dialectic is, and we're going to see an example of how this is put into action when we analyze the 9/11 occult ritual. The Hegelian dialectic is what chaos sorcery really is, and this is an ideology that was formulated by George Hegel, a German philosopher. The Hegelian dialectic is a framework for guiding our thoughts and actions into conflicts that lead to a predetermined solution. So the solution is already predetermined before anything happens. The people who are putting this into effect want a certain outcome. This is outcome-based framework, an outcome-based framework. It's saying this must occur. This is the end result that we want, and anything else is undesirable and we will not settle for. It's going to happen this way. We just have to convince people that it has to end up happening this way. So what you do is you guide thought and action into decision making that ends up how you wanted it to begin with. This is accomplished by manipulating consciousness into a circular pattern of thought and action. So again, it's a manipulation of consciousness. It's ultimately about mind control. The synthetic solution to these conflicts cannot be introduced unless those being manipulated take a side that will advance the predetermined agenda. The agenda is already predetermined. We just need to create a synthetic conflict to make this come into manifestation the way we have it originally planned and designed. So, this is Hegel's dialectic, and it is not so much that Hegel is an evil person in his own right. This is another perversion. How chaos sorcery is used as an example of the Hegelian dialectic is it's a modified version of this dialectic for a dark purpose, for manipulation. The researcher David Icke has called this problem, reaction, solution. And it's a great term for it because it describes it perfectly. You create the problem to get a reaction, and then you offer the solution. The solution was already predetermined. But I like to call it chaos, confusion, opportunity, because I think it more accurately describes what the process that's taking place is really about. You want to create chaos. You need a chaotic situation created, because the reaction that you're looking for is confusion, not knowing what to do or how to act appropriately to the situation. Once confusion enters the mix, you have fear-based consciousness. So the person is willing to accept all kinds of limitations and control to go back to order. And therefore, that's your opportunity to bring in your predetermined solution and get them to go along with what you originally wanted. David Rockefeller described the Hegelian dialectic perfectly. He said, "We are on the verge of global transformation. All we need is the right major crisis, and the nations will accept the new world order." And it's not the light one that he's talking about. This was the major crisis that they introduced. The events of 9/11, 2001 was an example of the modified Hegelian dialectic. It was an example of chaos sorcery. It was an occultic ritual of human sacrifice that involved three major examples of occultic symbology and ideology in the work to create the synthesis that they were looking for. And those three occult schools or occult ideologies that were employed on that day, the symbolism of which was employed on that day, was Kabbalah, Tarot, and Freemasonry. Now, before we get into any confusion at all, I want to state emphatically that I do not believe that any of these systems are evil in and of themselves. It is how occult sciences are used, occult knowledge is used by the practitioner to what end that determines whether they're wielded for good or evil. So it is not these practices or these systems that are of knowledge that are evil in any way. They are simply knowledge, and it is how they are used. Let's get that straight right off the bat. So, these three systems of occult knowledge all encode within them the understanding of human psychological makeup and human consciousness. And the ritual of 9/11 is ultimately about the destruction of that knowledge and keeping the truth down, keeping our awareness down. Destroying our awareness, destroying consciousness. So we're going to look at some examples of this occultic iconography and symbolism that was used on that day. The most glaring example of which is in tarot. This is the tarot image known as the Tower. It's a card that represents the end of an old way of things and the birth of a new way of things. It's the destruction of something that is old and worn down and the building of something new in its place. One thing is being cleared to make way for something to be put up in its place. Okay? So that's the Tower. It is depicted as being struck by a bolt of lightning, on fire, with people toppling out of the windows. And that is exactly what we saw on the day of 9/11/2001. We saw towers that were struck by forces. They were on fire, and people were leaping from the windows. So clearly the occultic symbology of this particular tarot card was employed on that day. Whether this be totally by design or it be synchronicity, I'll leave that up to the audience to decide. But one of the main things we have to understand how this ritual went into effect is that 2 buildings did not collapse in New York City. 3 buildings came down on that day in New York City alone. Many people still do not know this or understand it, amazingly, because the mainstream media only showed the collapse of this building here to the right only one time and never really showed it again, unless you go on the internet and search for the video of the collapse of World Trade Center number 7. Some people are still unaware that a 3rd building came down at 5:20 p.m. on that day. So we have to understand first that not only the Twin Towers collapsed into their own footprint, but so did Building 7, a 47-story steel, concrete and steel reinforced building, collapsed into its own footprint in approximately 6.5 seconds at 5:20 p.m. on 9/11/2001, when no plane had struck it. So I'm not here to argue the physics of 9/11. I'm not here to even talk about any of the aspects of the how part of 9/11, the physics or the how it happened. I'm much more interested in using my time to discuss the why and the implications of the occultic symbology employed in what I consider a dark occult ritual, a ritual that embodied the modified Hegelian dialectic. And so the first thing to understand is 3 towers came down, 3 pillars, if you will, came down on 9/11, not 2. The first occult system that I'm going to look at in relation to 9/11 is Kabbalah. Kabbalah is an ancient Semitic form of occultism. Judaism takes some of its roots from Kabbalah, and this is the main symbolic structure, or this main symbolic icon of Kabbalism. It is known as the Sephirotic Tree of Life. This is known as the ladder to God, okay? The levels that go up in consciousness to God. And there are 10 of these spheres on the tree. If you count them, there are 10 total. This is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They're known as, these spheres are known as Sephirot. So the 10 Sephirot comprise the Tree of Life. Now in the books that describe this symbol, the Sephirotic tree, they're the Zohar and the Sefer Yetzirah. They look at it as that there are only 10 Sephirot. There are not 9 and there are not 11. This is specifically worded into these books. To speak of there as being any more or less Sephirot is considered like a blasphemy in Kabbalah, because there are only 10. So this is where part of the name, the name of the ritual comes from. Not 9, not 11, but yet we have the ritual happens on 9/11. And we'll talk about the occult significances of the numerology as well when we explore that. But in Kabbalah, 9 and 11 are considered blasphemies against the 10 Sephirot, if you speak of there as being any less than 10 or any more than 10. And we also see that the symbolic numbers, the numbers of these buildings are symbolic when we relate the ritual to Kabbalah, because the buildings that came down were the Tower 1, which is the male tower. Okay? It has a phallic symbol on top. This is Tower 1 in the numbering system of the World Trade Center. The feminine tower is Tower number 2. And then this building is World Trade Center 7. So if we add them together, we get 1 plus 2 plus 7, and that equals 10. So we see there are 10 Sephirot. The building numbers total 10. So they're bringing down the 10 in the buildings, and they're bringing down symbolically the 10 Sephirot. You see, in the Sephirot, there are 3 pillars, 3 columns. You have this left-hand path known as the path of severity. You have the right-hand path that is known as the path of mercy. Again, these are corollaries to the Freemasonic pillars. This will be the pillar of mercy, which is Joachim. This is the pillar of severity, or Boaz. And then you have the path of mildness, or the path of will. Will to ascend in consciousness. This sphere representing base consciousness, and this sphere representing cosmic consciousness. Without going into very deep explanations of what each Sephirot represents, just understand that this middle pillar is the synthesis between these two. This represents too much male aspect or control. This could be too much capitulation to control. You can look at it that way, with this path being severity, this path being mercy. You could look at it as this path is not being a controller and also not being a slave. It is not being a dominator nor capitulating to domination. Therefore, the middle way, as it is called in Buddhism, the unification of male and female, the chemical wedding. It is the ascension from base consciousness through connection with conscience, the heart chakra, and attaining cosmic consciousness or higher level awareness, represented as the crown Sephirot. See, if you collapse these in, right? If you were to take these 3 levels and collapse them in right into the middle pillar to bring these dual aspect Sephirot into one, you would see that this really represents the chakra system. The 7 chakras. You would have the base chakra, the sacrum chakra. These 2 comprise the solar plexus chakra, the heart chakra. These 2 comprise the throat chakra. These 2 comprise the third eye chakra, and that comprises the crown chakra. So there's the 7 chakras. All right? And we see that would be on the middle pillar, and it would contain 7 chakras. And again, the middle pillar here is building 7. All correlates perfectly. Here are the chakras, representing the 7 planets. Up the middle pillar, the spinal column, the raising of the Kundalini energy up the spine and to the top of the head. From down here, the farthest out from the sun, until we get up to the solar mind. And the earth being the heart chakra of the system. The earth and moon right in the middle. It would be the 4th of the 7 chakras. And that's what's ultimately being brought down. The consciousness is being destroyed and leveled by the leveling of these towers. Okay, so that's Kabbalah. That's the Kabbalistic aspect of the destruction of the World Trade Center buildings, the 3 pillars of the World Trade Center. The second occultic tradition, Tarot, we see again the columns of Joachim and Boaz. Now, see, they're reversed in this example. They're the same way that they are in the Kabbalistic Sephirotic tree of life. But this is the male pillar, the light pillar, the pillar of mercy. This is the male pillar, because you're looking at the entrance of the temple. See, in the Freemasonic tracing board that we discussed, the light pillar is on this side because you're on the outside of the temple walking in. In this example, you're inside the temple looking toward the outside, and the goddess is seated in the temple and she's veiled from the outside. So if you were to picture yourself walking in from behind her, right, and she's veiled, the Joachim pillar would be to your left. And that is the male pillar, and here we see the male pillar with the phallic symbol. The feminine pillar, see, it's on her right side. This one's on her left side. So you have the feminine pillar, which would represent Boaz. The masculine pillar here would represent Joachim. The middle pillar represents the goddess. Again, it's a sacrifice of the goddess. Once again, we see it happening. Here we see she's the moon goddess. She has the cross on her chest, the cross of the sun, you know, that she carries within, that she gives birth to. Here we see that the Sephirotic tree is behind her, because Tarot, Kabbalah, and Freemasonry are aspects of occultism that must be studied in conjunction with each other to fully understand them. The goddess holds the book of truth, the Torah, the law, the truth, and it is veiled by her cloak because no one knows how the story ends. The future is still to be written. So, in ancient goddess worship traditions, this goddess was known as Tara, T-A-R-A. And this is why, as a result of this ritual, we have a war on Tara. Terror. But see, it's said, when it's said quickly, it morphs, and the word phonetically becomes terror. The war on terror. The war on the goddess, the war on the sacred feminine, the war on our emotional feminine aspect, to shut down conscience and to simply follow orders, to do whatever we are commanded to do, to simply follow orders without conscience being involved. The sacrifice of the goddess, care, conscience, the sacred feminine principle of the individual. So again, this middle pillar is the most important. It is the synthesis between the male and feminine, masculine and feminine energies, the other two pillars. So the third pillar is the principle of truth, because another name for this goddess in Egyptian tradition was Taurt. And Taurt's name kind of phonetically morphed until it became Taruth. And this is where we get the word truth out of. Phonetically, the word truth comes from a derivation of this goddess's name. So she is the goddess of truth. Now this is why there is a 9/11 truth movement, because they took too big of a chance in completing the ritual when no plane had hit it. See, a plane was more likely than not scheduled to hit that building, or something was scheduled to hit that building, whether you believe it's planes or whatever you believe actually struck, or the force that was used to bring down those buildings, to me is irrelevant. The buildings did disintegrate. They were brought down, okay? And whether you believe it's controlled demolition or even a more exotic technology is irrelevant as far as I'm concerned. The buildings were brought down, and that's the main thing. And the middle pillar, which represents the goddess, it represents truth, it represents the path to higher consciousness, the unification of the masculine and feminine principles of consciousness within the individual, are being destroyed. Ritualistically, symbolically, we're destroying the sacred feminine. We're destroying care. We're destroying conscience. We're destroying consciousness. We're destroying truth. Okay, that's what the ritual is about. And that is why Building 7 had to be brought down. Something went awry in the plan. Whatever was supposed to happen physically to that building didn't happen when it was really scheduled to happen, because clearly these buildings were wired with explosives well in advance of the actual ritual taking place, because that, explosions did happen from within the building and no one could have wired them on that day. So something happened and they could not take it down as they wanted to, but they would not leave the pillar up. Because if they left it there, it would symbolically represent that the will still stands. The will to ascend in consciousness. It would symbolically represent that the truth still stands. That the goddess still stands. And they could not do that. They had to complete the symbolic interpretation of this mass ritual by bringing the middle pillar down, even if nothing had appeared to strike it, and that's why they brought it down at the end of the day. So that is the tarot aspect of it, and how the goddess ties into it. It is a symbolic sacrifice of the sacred feminine, of the goddess, once again. And now a clear example here of the three pillars that we've already seen in the Freemasonic tracing board. Again, the masculine or solar pillar of Joachim, the feminine or lunar pillar of Boaz, and then the pillar of Jacob, Jacob's ladder, the middle pillar, the one that gets you through the stargate, okay? It gets you to the all-seeing eye, right? The all-seeing eye directing the entire operation, right? Takes you past that, through the stargate, to the realm where the true light is at, the intelligent principle of the universe. And this middle pillar is the synthesis between these two. So this is thesis, this is antithesis, antithesis, and this is synthesis. That's the Hegelian dialectic. You are combining thesis with its antithesis to create the synthesis that you are looking for. And that is the ladder to higher consciousness, to higher ground, so to speak, from which you can see the entire game board. You can see the whole floor of the house, as they call it in Freemasonry. You're seeing it from a higher level perspective, and from that, a controller can play two sides off against each other. See, the one who achieves this level, the highest ground, the third pillar, the middle pillar, really sees things that one in base consciousness from the lower perspective, the dual perspective, cannot see things from. So they can be easily played off like a puppet master playing off two puppets on strings against each other. So that's how the Hegelian dialectic works, and that's exactly how they used this event. They're playing off two sides against each other, the Christian nations against the Muslim nations, when in fact, those who want the synthesis created the whole thing. They orchestrated the entire thing. And they got their synthesis, rushing off into wars with countries that really did not have anything to do with the events of that day, because it was a highly orchestrated occultic event controlled by the hidden sorcerers from behind the scenes, and this entire operation was directed from that all-seeing eye, the Pentagon. So bringing down the middle pillar at the end here could represent, well, once a puppet master climbs up to a higher level to control two sides against each other, he has to destroy his ladder so no one can come up to reach him where he's at to discover that he's the one pulling the strings. See, in that symbolic context, that's why they destroy the middle pillar there. So in any context, it works. To understand also in Freemasonry, Hiram Abiff is a representation of truth or conscience, right? He is the middle pillar here. He is the grand architect of Solomon's Temple, the greater architect. Hiram, king of Tyre, being the lesser architect, representing the square. Hiram Abiff represents this G in the middle, the grand architect. He is the grand architect for Solomon, who represents the compass on the Masonic compass and square. So he is also a manifestation of the truth that is the synthesis between the male and female aspects. See, and he's wearing a blindfold. Truth is blind. And again, it could symbolize an initiate who is initially blind, and then he gradually becomes the all-seeing guy through his ascent to the higher level of awareness. He begins on the floor of the house, blind to the light. He ends up at the all-seeing eye. Again, a symbolic understanding of consciousness as a journey from darkness into light. And this, again, is a representation of these pillars are a representation of the Temple of Solomon. And the original Temple of Solomon is the Giza complex. These pyramids are the mystery tradition's embodiment of the temple in man. That's what they were representing then. And the buildings in New York City are a rebuilding of this symbolic temple in New York City. Just like they were built in Giza, like the Temple of Solomon was built in Jerusalem, and then it was razed to the ground, and another version was built. It was rebuilt in New York City symbolically, and then it was destroyed again. And now they're planning on building another Temple of Solomon on the ground where the World Trade Center was destroyed. But they're doing it in a very different way this time, which we'll understand when we get to that slide. But see, Hiram Abiff, the ritual of becoming a Master Mason is about Hiram Abiff's ritual murder. And he says that he refuses to give the secrets of Freemasonry. He refuses to give the secret word of the Master Mason. He says, I will not give it to these ruffians who are accosting me. They want to know the word without doing the work. So he is ultimately slain by these ruffians for not giving the word, but he only tells them that you'll know the word of the Master Mason when the temple is rebuilt. This is a symbol that the temple in man, the brain, is ultimately in a state of total disrepair. It's been destroyed through manipulation and control and taking people's consciousness down to lower and lower levels and just completely being conditioned and accepting falsities as truths and refusing to accept truths as what is. So Hiram Abiff, as a representative and a servant of truth, refuses to capitulate to domination or become a dominator, and he is slain ritualistically for it. This is a representation of the aspect of consciousness that is base consciousness being slain and it being reborn through a connection to conscience as the widow's son. See, the widow's son is who Hiram Abiff is. And this is the son, again, of the limbic brain, the mother aspect, the feminine aspect, who does not have a male counterpart because the reptile complex, the base brain, has been put into check by our intuitive side and our conscience. So then the male child of proper moral action, the unified neocortex, is born of the widow, the mother without the father or the virgin birth. It's the Christ story retold in a different way. The widow's son is born. The unified neocortex bears the person of proper moral action because they're being born of the intuitive feminine part of the brain, and the male dominator reptilian part of the brain has fallen away. He's fallen dead. Okay, so that's what the story of Hiram Abiff is about. And he's saying to the ruffians, those in base consciousness who threatened to kill him for not giving the secrets of Freemasonry, you'll know the word when the temple here is rebuilt. And the word, the lost word of Freemasonry is equilibrium. That is the lost word. Because equilibrium is what we're striving for between the hemispheres of our brain. and the masculine and feminine polarities that are indwelling within us. So they have to come to a state of equilibrium, and then the temple will be rebuilt. The brain will operate in global coherence across both brain hemispheres, and the third eye will be opened, and cosmic consciousness will be awakened. That is what this story is about. That is what the ritual murder of Hiram Abiff is about. And we'll keep that in mind when we understand that there is a new temple being built on the ruins of the old temple in New York City. Again, the complex of the World Trade Center is a symbolic representation of the original Temple of Solomon, the pyramid complex at Giza. Rebuilt in Washington, D.C., here we see the 3 pillars at Giza, 2 extremely large towers or pillars, and 1 small one. And we see it rebuilt here, the 2 large towers and then the one that is less than half of the size of the other 2. This sphere here is a representation of the Sphinx, okay, at the base of these columns. So these columns are also a symbol of the Babylonian gold-headed man depicted in the dream of Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel, a prophetic book in the Bible. The gold-headed man represents centralized authority, pharaonic rule, or total hegemony, the unquestioned global ruler, the one world order, the church and state unified in the head of gold. And as dynasties went on, power diminishes. It goes through the Silver Age, then it goes into the Bronze Age, and eventually you have the separation of church and state. And you have the iron legs of the separation of church and state, and then you eventually get to the clay feet if you study this symbology in Daniel. And it's understanding how power is amassed, and eventually through time it is diminished until they're trying to get back from this level to this level. And that is what the Dark New World Order would be. The destruction of the 2 pillars and the combining of them into one centralized authority, one world state and religion. That's what the New World Order ultimately is about, the Dark New World Order. So they're destroying these 2 iron legs. They're destroying the iron legs of the Babylonian gold-headed man to try to get back to one centralized authority of church and state. These pillars could be seen symbolically as church and state being destroyed. So where do we see the concepts of church and state? We see them in tarot on the death card of the major arcana. So we see the rider, death, on the white horse, coming with the flag, the black flag that has the inverted pentagram on it, the destruction of spirit. He is running down a king, and he's getting ready to run down a pope or a priest. So this is the ruler of state, this is the ruler of church or religion, and he's running them both down, destroying church and state. And you see in the background the 2 pillars with the setting sun in the background. The light going out from the world between the 2 columns. Highly symbolic. This is a representation of the new temple that they're building. In place of where the 2 pillars stood, they're planning on erecting one from where the 2 stood. The thesis and antithesis destroyed, the synthesis is created. The phallic symbol, the one male phallic symbol, erected in place where the symbols of church and state symbolically once stood. You know, obviously they weren't buildings that really represent that, but they're symbolic analogs to these concepts. And putting the 1 pillar up in the place where the 2 stood is the rebuilding of the destroyed Temple of Solomon in New York. The sun and the moon, and now only the sun, or phallic symbol, the male tower, remains. That is what 9/11 was about. Incidentally, the Freedom Tower is what that building is going to be called, and it's scheduled for completion in the year 2012. I'm sure to correlate with other dark prophecies of apocalypse or Armageddon, and which isn't what I see 2012 as being at all. I see it really being the birth of consciousness, because they're not able to put consciousness down. Their ritual failed. There is hope in the fact that the Building 7 stood, and they had to bring it down and essentially screwed up the entire thing by really making people come online and understand that this was an inside job and this was an occult ritual by bringing down that middle pillar when nothing had hit it. So that was the ultimate mistake in this whole ritual enactment, and as far as I'm concerned, they did not fulfill the agenda that they were trying to fulfill by this ritual being enacted. Instead, they initiated a great awakening within the human population. As the researcher Michael Tessarian is fond of saying, did 9/11 shake us up, or did it? So now, just as we did with the reverse of the Great Seal on the back of the $1 bill, I'm going to examine the gematria, the occultic numerology involved in the 9/11 event. These are the numbers of the 3 flights that struck these 3 buildings. The North Tower was struck by Flight 11, the South Tower was struck by Flight 175, and the Pentagon was allegedly struck by Flight 77. Now, there is another flight that was involved on that day that crashed in Shanksville, Pennsylvania by an unknown act of will, shall we say. And this was Flight 93, and it is my contention that Flight 93 was indeed headed for World Trade Center number 7, Building 7 of the Trade Center, not to Washington, D.C., as is claimed. And this, to me, makes much more sense than it heading toward Washington, D.C., because I believe it was there to strike a building that had already been wired to allegedly collapse, as the 2 Twin Towers were, and that was Building 7. And the flight not making it to that building meant that they had to make a decision about whether to pull that building or to allow it to stand, and we know what they chose. So I'm going to place 93 over Building 7, and at first this would seem like a very arbitrary arrangement of numbers, and that these numbers don't have any commonalities to them, until we begin to perform gematria upon them. And then we see a very clear pattern emerge. So I'm going to leave 11 as is for now, and I'm going to reduce or add these 2 numbers together and get a total. So 9 plus 3 is 12. 1 plus 7 plus 5 is 13, and 7 plus 7 is 14. So now, the 4 of the floor planes, we have a clear pattern. We have the pattern 11, 12, 13, and 14. And we can further reduce those down to 1 digit. We add 1 plus 1 and we get 2. 1 plus 2 is 3. 1 plus 3 is 4. 1 plus 4 is 5. So we have the pattern 2, 3, 4, 5. When we add those together, 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5, we get the total 14. And again, there's that symbolic number again that totals 5, that is about the 5 elements: earth, air, water, fire, and spirit. But it is the separation of them, the 1 and the 4, the spirit and then the 4 elements. This is the 14th level of that pyramid, where the light is at, the 13 levels of stone, and then the light at the top, the 14th level. So look at the 9/11 date, 9/11/2001. You add up all of these numbers, 9 plus 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 1 in 2001, and you get 14 again. So not only is it the date, it's the powers that did the act. Okay? The 4 planes totaled to 14. Their digits all totaled make 14. So the powers that performed this act are the 14, and this correlates with the 14th level of this pyramid, or the illuminated ones, the sorcerers behind the scenes that are manipulating the events of the world. So we have this arrangement on the building: 77 at the Pentagon, 11 at the North Tower, 175 at the South Tower, 93 at Building 7. If we add the two planes that struck these towers together, we get the number 186. 175 plus 11 is 186. Now, these are the planes that struck the twin towers, the North and South Tower. What if we equally distribute that number between the two buildings by dividing it into two? 186 divided by 2 is 93. So there is 93, 93, 93 on every building, and we've already seen what 93 represents. It represents the will to ascend out of illusion, out of base consciousness, and into cosmic awareness, or higher levels of consciousness. 93 is the number of willpower and of love. It is essentially the same force, the force that expands consciousness, love, or will to ascend, to put what we think and feel into action, to use our willpower. So we are left with only two numbers that symbolically represent the events of this day: 77 and 93. And these are two extremely significant occult numbers in numerology, because they represent two completely different concepts. And we have to look at these two numbers as they relate to a third number, the number 777, which we've already seen is the number of God, or completion, or perfection. We saw that earlier. The 7 chakras, the 7 planets that can be seen with the naked eye, tripled for the 3 aspects of consciousness, unified as one to total 3. Again, it's the number of God, the number of completion, or the number of perfection. 93 in relation to this number 777. Just like 777 totals 21, which totals 3, 93 totals 12, which reduces to 3. So they equal the same thing, which means they equal the same. They mean the same thing. So love is 93. Will is the concept of 93. It is the number of ascension. So all of these ideas are the same. They mean the same thing. In gematria, when numerological additions total the same value, the words that they represent really mean the same thing. So 93 is 777, is love, is will, is ascension, is God, is completion, is perfection. These are all the same concept. The number 77 is very significant. It is the 14. It is the dark aspect of that light in the triangle, the ego, the all-seeing eye that is identified with building that pyramid upward, the physical form, the physical world, ruling, control, sorcery. It is the force of chaos. The number 77 represents chaos in all forms of occultism. It represents the sorcerer. It is the sorcerer's number. And it is the number of the beast in disguise. Why is that? Because if you fail, even if you succeed in one of the other two aspects of consciousness, in thought and emotion but not action, or in thought and action but no emotion, in the example of a sorcerer, has no emotion, or even in emotion and action but with no thought, that is base consciousness. That is the beast. You have not arrived at the 777. You have only arrived at the 77, which is 2/3 of completion, or it is 14 out of 21, 2/3, right? And this reduces in decimal to 0.666, repeating. So it is the number of the beast in disguise. The sorcerer is the beast. And this is encoded on the 3rd degree tracing board of Freemasonry. Here you see the tools that slayed Hiram Abiff. He is finally struck with the mallet, representing ignorance, the light going out, the third eye being struck, put into the coffin, okay? The coffin is the spirit, where Hiram Abiff, the HHH, hey in Hebrew, representing 555, Hiram Abiff's number. He is in his coffin because he is the spirit, he is the truth, he is the light, and he is the skull and bones is placed on top of the coffin, symbolic of the sorcerer. The sorcerer who conquers his spirit, so that the skull, cleverness, thought and cleverness, left brain cleverness, plus the will to act, reigns over the spirit. The sorcerer has cleverness, he has the will to put his cleverness into action, but he has no conscience. The conscience is entombed in that coffin. And an individual such as this is headed west. They are headed toward the realm of darkness and death, to the west, not toward the realm of light, to the east. And here symbolically is the sprig of acacia, and that represents the hope of resurrection in Freemasonry. So this is the hope that one who has destroyed their own spirit through their usage of their intellect and their will to act in an egoic fashion may indeed still be able to resurrect the spirit and come to a place of moral uprightness and conscience. So that is what this tracing board represents, and it is the 3rd degree tracing board. It is saying you may now be initiated into some of the mystery, into some of the knowledge, but you must use that with spirit intact and not use it as a sorcerer. Otherwise you are headed west and you are not headed toward the true realm of light, which lies to the east. And I think that's a great allegorical explanation for morality. And we see, therefore, that the two numbers that this ritual reduces down to is 77 and 93, and the positions that they are in is all telling. The purpose of the ritual is so that the sorcerers that are consider themselves the all-seeing eye of consciousness, okay, are destroying others' ability to find truth, to give birth to conscience, and to rise in consciousness. And they're destroying that ladder to the higher realms of consciousness. Or if we replace 77 and 93 with their symbolic analog, 77 the number of the beast in disguise, 93 another variant for 777 the number of God. Look at what this ritual is really about symbolically. It is about the beast reigning above God, the beast becoming God and destroying God. That's what it's ultimately about. That's how dark this ritual really is. It is about the ego and illusion conquering the spirit and conquering higher consciousness. We can see that it is encoded in the date itself. 9/11 reduces to 9/2. We're just adding the two ones together. And there we have symbolically the entire ritual encapsulated in the name. 9/11 is 92. See, it is not 93. It's one short of love, of ascension, of will, of God. It is falling short of the divine. That's what this whole event was about. That the idea that human will is falling short, and now the time of the beast is upon us. See, 92 out of 93, falling short of love, will, ascension, God, is reduces to 11 out of 12, which reduces to 2 out of 3, which again is the number of base consciousness. It is the number of the beast when it is reduced to its decimal format. And that's what the whole ritual of 9/11 was ultimately all about. It is about the destruction of the ladder to God, bringing down the Kabbalistic tree of life, the 10 Sephirot, 1, 2, and 7, bringing them down to destroy the ladder with which we can use to ascend in consciousness. It is about the destruction of the truth and the goddess, a human sacrifice ritual. Those people were ritualistically sacrificed in this evil doing. And it is about the destruction of the sacred feminine, of care, of truth. Another ritual to immolate the goddess of care. The goddess that represents the earth, Terra. Again, you hear politicians say, if you are not with us, you are with the terrorists. Tara, the goddess, the Mother Earth. Terra is the name for earth. If you're not with us, you're with those who side with the earth and the Mother Goddess, right? And it was also used to create the Hegelian dialectic, the bringing down of thesis and antithesis to create synthesis, the sorcerer's middle pillar. That's what the event of 9/11, 2001 was all about. An occult ritual to bring about the dark, modified version of the Hegelian dialectic. Chaos, confusion, opportunity. General Douglas MacArthur talked about the Hegelian dialectic. He said, our government has kept us in a perpetual state of fear, kept us in a continuous stampede of patriotic fervor with the cry of grave national emergency. Always there has been some terrible evil at home or some monstrous foreign power that was going to gobble us up if we did not blindly rally behind it. Create the chaos, get the confused, fearful reaction, and then that's your opportunity to offer the solution that you had in waiting. Hermann Goering perfectly understood this, one of the highest ranking officials of the Third Reich, the Nazi regime. He said, naturally the common people don't want war. Neither in Russia, nor in England, nor for that matter in Germany. That is understood. But after all, it is the leaders of the country who determine the policy. And it is always a simple matter to drag the people along, whether it is a democracy, a fascist dictatorship, a parliament, or a communist dictatorship. Voice or no voice, the people can always be brought to the bidding of the leaders. That is easy. All you have to do is tell them they are being attacked and denounce the peacemakers for lack of patriotism and exposing the country to danger. It works the same in any country. And that is what we saw on 9/11. Except it wasn't just telling the people that they were attacked. This is what Hitler did. Hitler burned his own Reichstag building, the German parliamentary building in Germany, and he blamed it on the communists, even though his Gestapo really did the fire. They lit the fires at the Reichstag, and he blamed it on the communists as an act to usurp more political power and be appointed as Supreme Chancellor. Goering was describing the Hegelian dialectic exactly. Benjamin Franklin made this statement: those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. And we have neither as a result of going along with this witch hunt and this hunting for the boogeyman that perpetuated 9/11, because Middle Eastern terrorists did not do this event. It was a staged, orchestrated, occult ritual that has nothing to do with Islamic fundamentalism whatsoever. Voltaire said that those who can make you believe absurdities can make you commit atrocities. If you go along with what simply is not true, you can be led into any number of atrocious actions. And Really, that's what the ritual was all about, to keep us in a perpetual state of fear so that we are easier to control. And that's what the whole fear of terrorism and the terror alert system is all about. See, just like Hitler burned his parliamentary building, we had our Reichstag fire called the 9/11 event, and it's just about an attack on civil liberties and our rights and our right for freedom of speech, and just to curtail all the God-given rights that we already possess as an attack on our personal sovereignty. And people will be willing to give up more personal sovereign rights if their consciousness is shut down through fear. They bought into the fear, and now we're going off in other lands that really had nothing to do with this event, and we're waging war and killing millions of innocent people as a result of this total fraudulent staged event. And these are the atrocities that we're committing because we've believed in this absurdity. The murder of children, torture, now seen as acceptable in many circles, absolutely reprehensible actions perpetrated upon people that do not deserve to be treated like animals, which is what they're doing to many of the prisoners that they're holding in oftentimes secret prison camps. And it's just a further perpetuation of suffering and fear into the world that is a self-perpetuating cycle and creates more and more of the same dynamic: fear, disorder, chaos. That's what the whole event was about. Encapsulated in the 33rd degree of the 33rd degree of the Order of Freemasonry is this symbol, the double-headed eagle, which represents he who sees the past and the future, because ultimately the same force is controlling both and directing both. And it's about order out of chaos. Deus meum quae jus is a Latin phrase that means God and my right. God and my right, like the divine right of kings. And ordo ab chaos, another emblem of the 33rd degree, chaos, sorcery. Our brand of order out of our brand of chaos. Now there is a positive interpretation of this emblem and of the phrase ordo ab chaos. Order does indeed arise from chaotic situations when you look at putting water into a vessel and taking it from one level up to a higher level. That is the way consciousness ascends. It has to be a chaotic event, but then it comes up to a higher level and then it maintains equilibrium and order again. So that is a way of seeing this principle as in a positive way, but in this event, certainly dark occultists manipulating sorcerers are orchestrating this event as an example of chaos sorcery, chaos magic, to bring about their Hegelian dialectical order out of the chaotic events that they themselves orchestrated. And that is the final method of manipulation. So now, the last thing I'm going to do in part 2 is talk about what is the globalist esoteric agenda. What is the ultimate agenda that the globalists want to see brought about? Why are they doing all of these things? Why all of this manipulation and mind control? What is the end game? What is the end result of what they're trying to accomplish? What is their agenda? And J. Edgar Hoover, former FBI director, made this statement: the individual is handicapped by coming face to face with a conspiracy so monstrous he cannot believe it exists. The American mind simply has not come to a realization of the evil which has been introduced into our midst. It rejects even the assumption that human creatures could espouse a philosophy which must ultimately destroy all that is good and decent. See, this is why we're in such denial, why we're in such cognitive dissonance about all of this. People will say, I don't care if I had absolute definitive proof that this is exactly what happened and how it happened. I won't believe it anyway. I will choose to believe in something that isn't true because my mind can't go there. It's too uncomfortable for me to accept. And this is the condition Hoover, right here, a former FBI director, is describing. He's describing cognitive dissonance, psychological denial that comes from the refusal to accept the fact that things are as bad as they are. David Rockefeller described this New World Order, what they're trying to put into effect. This agenda, he described it. He said, "We are grateful to the Washington Post, the New York Times, Time Magazine, and other great publications whose directors have attended our meetings and respected their promises of discretion for almost 40 years. It would have been impossible for us to develop our plan for the world if we had been subjected to the lights of publicity during those years." He is thanking the media for their silence and complicity in not exposing the agenda of these global manipulators and their plan for the world. He said, "The world is now more sophisticated and prepared to march toward a world government. The supranational sovereignty of an intellectual elite and world bankers is surely preferable to the national auto-determination practiced in past centuries." Imagine the hubris of somebody making this statement practically out in the open, saying that the world surely would be better to be completely governed by international bankers and an intellectual elite rather than national sovereignty and personal sovereignty codified by our documents of higher consciousness, like the Declaration of Independence, that explained what the sovereignty of man is really about and where it comes from. And he's saying out in the open, why have that when you can have rule by international banking dynasties? This is what the agenda is all about. The elite want to get back to the Babylonian gold-headed man. They want to get back to 100% total control of all the resources and all the minds on the planet as God on the earth, the all-seeing eye in human form, that which is omnipresent, omnipotent, and all-powerful. All-powerful, all-knowing, all-seeing, present everywhere. So this is the rulership of church and state in one.